Not long after my brother got married several years ago, my son and I went to help him move. The plan was big, but it was simple. Get a moving truck, load up everything from his apartment, drive to his wife's apartment, pick up everything from there, then drive to their house, the final destination, and unload it all. But things did not go according to plan. There was a big miscalculation. By the time we got to his wife's apartment, we all realized this will never fit in the truck. We had to load a few things, drive the hour drive to the new house, unload the truck, drive back to her old apartment, and get the rest. And by the time we were at the house with the final load, it was 2 a.m. We had been moving things all day. We had no energy, no will to lift a thing. You could say we had a poverty of energy. And yet, we had to unload the truck. So in our poverty, we gave the little we had to finish the unloading of the truck. And I think most of you have had similar experiences, maybe with moving or at your jobs or running a race or in some difficult situation with no will to go on, and yet you needed to keep going. And so you did. So similar to the widows in the readings today, we've given from what little we have. I'd like to consider this theme of poverty from three perspectives, like I just said a few minutes ago. First, the poverty of others. Second, the poverty of Jesus. And third, our own poverty. So first, let's discuss the poverty of others. When we hear the word poverty or the word poor, we immediately think of those lacking financial resources, like the poor widow and son that Elijah met in the first reading, and like the widow Jesus saw giving her offering. And that certainly makes sense. We should always consider the suffering of those who have less. And the psalm also described other forms of poverty: oppression, hunger, captivity, blindness, being a stranger, fatherlessness. The Catechism of the Catholic Church also provides categories of poverty, like material deprivation, unjust oppression, physical illness, psychological illness. Think about those broad categories of poverty. Who do you know that's poor? And as you think about those you know, now ask yourself, how do I treat them? The Catechism of the Catholic Church goes on to say, those who are oppressed by poverty are the object of a preferential love on the part of the church. The church, and that's all of us, is supposed to identify those in poverty and love them. When you look on the poor, is love your first reaction? To the homeless person on the street corner asking for money, is love your first reaction? To the ill person who's grumpy, to your spouse who has had a terribly bad day, to the special needs child and their family, to those discriminated against. In all of those cases, is love your first reaction? In the gospel today, Jesus saw the widow drop her few cents in the treasury. St. Josemaria Escriva said, there's a light in Jesus' eyes as he sees her. The scene may have gone something like this. With a smile and love in his eyes, Jesus said, guys, come here. See that widow? She dropped a few cents in the basket. And the disciples might have looked at him and said, that's nothing. And Jesus explains, yes, but it's all she has. What a beautiful offering she gives. When you see someone as poor, do you look on them with love? Do you look at their meager offerings with little care? Or do you recognize it as a beautiful sacrifice? So we know that others around us are poor. What about the poverty of Jesus? And this topic could go on for a long time. There's lots to talk about. We could talk about the poverty of God becoming human. We could add that not only did our God come among us as a person, he didn't come as a superhero or as royalty. He came as a poor baby born in a barn. But let's look at his ultimate poverty, the poverty of the cross. Ask yourself the same questions as before. When I look upon poor Jesus on the cross, is love my first reaction? When I look upon poor Jesus on the cross, do I look at it with little care, or do I recognize it as a beautiful, the most beautiful sacrifice? The second reading today explained, he has appeared at the end of the ages to take away sins by his sacrifice. So let's consider that sacrifice. He was arrested. His friends abandoned him. He was beaten mercilessly. People testified falsely to his crimes. They spit on him. They tied him to a post and beat him. They made fun of him by shoving a crown of thorns on his head. They gave him his cross to carry a mile uphill to his place of execution. They nailed his hands. They nailed his feet. They lifted the cross. He hung there for hours, struggling to breathe, only relieving that struggle with excruciating pain. And near the end, he says these words, my God, why have you abandoned me?" The poor widow gave Elijah the last of her flour out of love for others. The widow in the gospel gave the last of her money out of love for others. And here's Jesus, broken and dying, abandoned by friends, and now feeling even the absence of his Father. He experiences the ultimate poverty in the history of the world. And what does he do in that poverty? He gives the last of himself out of love for others. He gives the last of himself out of love for you. And that makes it the ultimate moment of love in the universe. As I've talked about being poor in this homily, maybe you reflected on ways that you experience poverty. Maybe you thought about your lack of necessary income right now, or your lack of time, or your poor health, or the stress you experience that drains your emotions, or ways that you are unfairly oppressed, or maybe you simply lack friendship at the moment. Look at the examples of the widows. They had almost nothing left, but almost is not nothing. In your moments of poverty, you have something left. What are you doing with that little bit? To be clear, I'm not suggesting we overdo anything that harms our mental or our physical health. I'm suggesting that we look at the examples from Scripture that risk what little they have. What can you do with the little you have? When you're tired from a long day, maybe someone will want you to listen to their problems. What a wonderful gift it would be to offer your time. When you've spent your energy on your own needs, maybe a neighbor will need help. Perhaps your effort is the solution to their problem. Maybe your burdens and excitements of the week make it hard to pay attention at Mass today. What a beautiful struggle it is to keep trying to listen to the words of the Mass and what God has to offer us. And it doesn't matter if we feel warm and fuzzy. St. Francis de Sales addresses this when he says, "The least little good works, even though performed somewhat coldly and not according to the whole extent of charity which is in us, are agreeable to God and esteemed by him." Consider that Jesus might be looking at you with light in his eyes. He might call the apostles to him. He might call all the saints in heaven to him and point to you and say, "Do you see what little she has? Look how she offers it. Look over there. He has almost nothing, but he gives it to others with love." Brothers and sisters, the readings today call us to evaluate poverty. When we see poverty in others, do we give justice and food and freedom and sight and friendship to those in need? When we see the offering of the poor, do we embrace it with honor? In our own poverty, do we dwell on what we lack, or do we offer the little we have? Jesus taught us by his sacrifice on the cross that poverty is an opportunity for love. He made it into the moment of greatest love. And that's our challenge for this week, to see poverty as an opportunity for love. Offer the poor your love. Accept the gift of the poor with love. In your own poverty, give with love. St. Anthony of Padua,